Cause you're looking for the same thing. It's a new thing. Check out this I bring. The roll below the level. Cause I'm living low next to the bay. Come on. Turn up the radio.
This is what I got from the book. And I love John. I'm a writer who could never be a cop, but you were a cop who was a writer. So I guess some people can chew gum and talk to that. So what I get from the book is the message you're trying to send is racial profiling and harassment is a reality. It's a fact of life in cities across the country every day. And it's wrong. But that you feel that the way people who are the victims of that injustice deal with it can get them in more trouble. The message I get from the book is that you're telling people, don't accept racial profiling, don't accept injustice, but be smart and know how to deal with it and when to deal with it and when not to deal with it. Is that fair?
That's right.
Okay. So then I have to ask you a question I think is on everybody's mind who lives here these days. You're talking about cities. What about East Haven? Does this book apply to East Haven? It's about African American and Latino people, especially young males, driving in cities. What happens to them? The U.S. Justice Department says that especially happens in East Haven. We know one person who lost his life as a result. What should they be reading this book when they go to East Haven?
They should. There's one of the chapters in the book. It's called, I believe it's called 10 Years of Contemporary Policing. And in that chapter, we talk about the use of force and the definition of use of force according to the American definition as it relates to law enforcement. And in that chapter, I write about a series of what I consider to be some of the highlighted deadly shootings, which included Malik Jones, Quan Sander, Amadou Diallo, and as well as the Milford Franklin Reed shooting. The chapter doesn't really get too much into the shooting because I do not want the reader to lose focus and get too involved in what the shooting is all about. But the significance of all of the shootings were of unarmed African American males. And in many of the cases, with the exception of the New York Amadou Diallo shooting, most of them included African American males and white police officers. So it was really trendy, and it happened around the mid '90s on. What was really interesting was during the Malik Jones shooting. At that time, I was a member of the Silver Shields, and I actually met
the Silver Shield being the organization of black police officers
Yes.
in New Haven. Malik Jones lived in New Haven. He was driving in East Haven. He was tailed by a police officer into New Haven.
Right.
His car, he was not driving, he was in a lot. Officer runs up to him, breaks the window, close range, shoots 4 shots. Later said he was shocked as he received the go to hell level.
Right. To one of the reporters. So the issue there was two big issues happening, obviously. On one end, you had a traffic stop in which the person did not stop. On the other end, you had, at the end of that stop, the driver's dead with no weapon, no warrants, no drugs in the car. So that's obviously a problem. In my opinion as an author and a researcher behind it, I think what you're seeing in East Haven is the culmination of an attitude and a culture that existed within that department that got them here where they're at now. That even though the community came out overwhelmingly during the Malik Jones shooting, protesters, 500 people marched, black, white, Hispanic, Jewish, everything, marched into East Haven. Even as they marched into East Haven at that time, and I was not one of the marchers, they were taunted on the side on the side of the streets by people who were in East Haven. I won't call them the residents. I'm not saying they're the residents, but they were people who were obviously in East Haven, and they felt comfortable enough to taunt the marchers, the protesters, the people who were concerned about this. It's an attitude that bred a culture, in my opinion, that over the years, now that culture just kind of like it seeped out. It seeped out. And in this case, I think they kind of ran up against, we'll call it the deadly match. The deadly match was, they ran up against a man of God who partnered with Yale Law School. You know,
We're talking now about the new case.
Right.
Where the U.S. Justice Department said there's been this long-standing culture. They documented
Right.
what they said were years of false stops, false arrests, harassments, beatings while people are in handcuffs, targeted at Latinos.
The tragedy in East Haven is all of the Latinos and Hispanics that actually have a track record of being abused and what their abuses was. The tragedy is there's no data there for African Americans. There's no long-standing history of African, and it's almost like now that the Latinos have been abused and the Hispanics have been abused, and they're guilty, we're just gonna shut the door on it and go. And what about the African Americans? What is the history of African Americans? Because normally we know in this country, police reform is predicated on things like this. So if the Latinos and the Hispanics are the ones that are being aggressed and the ones that are in the injustice box right now, when the department is put back together, it's gonna be put back together along those parameters. So all of the issues that affected maybe African Americans, gays and lesbians, Jews, Muslims, all different people that may have fallen in that same category, there's nothing, there's no data. So we still haven't gotten at the door to correct the problem. We've just exposed one aspect of what the issues are.
Do you think, are you suggesting there was more concern because this group was Latino rather than African?
No. In this particular case, I guess you would say the recipe here was very good outspoken priest who was able to network with students from a law school, you know, who were very energetic around the issue. I think this is a hot topic because of immigration rights and all of the, you know, it's an election year for the president and all these things. So over time, that just stayed, it stayed out there. So in other words, the issue stayed present in the forefront to keep people motivated to deal with it. For the African Americans, it's not an issue. It's an issue for the African American community, but it's a dead issue in terms of the fight because there's no data. There's absolutely, positively nothing. All you have is obviously is the Malik Jones shooting, and other than that, there's nothing else that exists.
They're claiming I'm a criminal, but now I wonder how. Some people never know. The enemy could be their friend guardian. I'm now a hooligan. I rock the party and clear all the madness.